All right, let's kick off another deep dive. We're going to be taking a look at the future of finance on the blockchain.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, and we've got some great material to dig into, from some big names like Citibank and JP Morgan
Oh, wow.
and Asia Next. So we'll be exploring things like Citibank's take on tokenization
Okay.
and the lift and drop strategy. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, that's an intriguing concept.
It is, right. We're also going to be tackling that whole debate about public versus private blockchains.
Definitely a hot topic these days.
Yeah, so buckle up. We're about to jump into a financial landscape that's changing like incredibly fast.
It really is. I mean, it's not even a question of if traditional finance is going to integrate with blockchain.
Right.
It's more like when and how.
Exactly. Yeah. And it seems like Citibank is like embracing this whole thing.
They really
They're
are.
not shying away from it at all. In their recent document, they actually come out and say the new normal, which is pretty bold.
It is. They're basically saying this is the future, and they're all in.
Totally. And they seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on tokenization.
Yeah, they see tokenization as like essential for 247 money movement
Oh, okay.
and having real-time liquidity.
So does that mean like no more waiting days for a wire transfer to go through?
Exactly. They're talking about moving money around the world like instantly,
Wow.
any time of day or night.
I mean, imagine what that would do for like international trade or even like everyday transactions.
Right. It could be a game changer. And it's not just about, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin.
Okay, so what else are they looking at?
They're talking about stablecoins,
Oh, okay.
commercial bank deposit tokens, and even central bank digital currencies.
CBDCs.
Yes, exactly.
So it seems like financial institutions are starting to realize that they need to, adapt and evolve.
Yeah, they can't afford to be left behind.
Right.
We actually have a clip here from AsianX, and they really emphasize that this is like a make or break moment.
So they're saying, like, those who don't adapt, they're basically like obsolete.
Pretty much, yeah. And they're also pointing to the growing regulatory support for blockchain
Okay.
and the fact that we're seeing more and more real-world applications.
Okay.
This isn't just some like theoretical idea anymore.
Right, it's actually happening. But this brings up the whole debate about public versus private blockchains.
Right, that's the big question. Will we see trillions of dollars flowing into public blockchains?
Yeah, like Bitcoin.
Like Bitcoin, Ethereum,
Uh-huh.
or will private networks end up dominating?
Which do you think is more likely?
Well, there are strong arguments on both sides. Permissioned blockchains or private blockchains.
Okay.
They offer a high level of control and security.
Yeah, which makes sense for like institutions dealing with sensitive financial data.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, we're seeing some serious advancements in public blockchain technology.
We are. In fact, we have some pretty surprising statements from a few key players.
Okay, like who?
We've got the CEO of Signum.
Uh-huh.
They're really confident that public blockchains can handle huge transaction volumes securely.
So they're not worried about the scalability issue.
Not at all. And even more surprising,
What?
Tyrone Lobban from JP Morgan.
JP Morgan? I
Yeah,
thought they were like skeptical of Bitcoin.
they were. But even he is now acknowledging the potential of public blockchains
For what specifically?
for scalability and security.
Wow. Okay, so
A big shift in perspective.
it is. So if JP Morgan's starting to come around on public blockchains, that's like a huge deal.
It is, especially considering how much money they handle.
Trillions of dollars daily.
Right. So what are they planning to do? How are they going to approach this?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. They've been using this phrase, lift and drop, to describe their strategy.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
It sounds like they're envisioning a future where they basically take their existing systems
Okay.
and just like pock them onto a public blockchain.
Once the regulations are sorted out.
Right. That's the key thing. But hang on a second. We have another clip here. And this is from Christine Moy,
Oh, interesting.
former JP Morgan executive.
Okay.
And she uses the same phrase, lift and drop.
Wow. That's a pretty big coincidence.
Right. Especially since she was heavily involved in JP Morgan's blockchain stuff.
Yeah, that's true. It seems like they might have a shared vision even if they're not at the same company anymore.
So do you think it's going to be like a winner-take-all situation?
Between private and public blockchains?
Yeah, like one will completely dominate.
Well, Christine Moy actually has a different take on that.
Okay.
She thinks private and public blockchains will end up coexisting,
Oh, okay.
kind of like the telecom industry.
I'm listening. Tell me more.
Think about it. We have all these different types of telecom networks, right?
Yeah.
Secure private networks for like the military or financial institutions,
Okay.
and then massive open networks like the internet that connect billions of people.
So are you saying, like, permissioned blockchains could handle specific financial operations that need high security and control?
Exactly.
And public blockchains could be used for, like, a wider range of transactions and interactions,
Right. It's about finding the right tool for the right job.
like having a toolbox with all different kinds of tools.
Exactly. And it's not just about moving money faster or more efficiently.
So what else is it about then?
It's about, like, completely reimagining the whole financial system.
Okay, paint me a picture. What would that look like?
Imagine a world where financial transactions are not just faster and cheaper,
Okay.
but also more transparent
Mhm.
and secure,
Okay.
where anyone can access financial services no matter where they live
Right.
or their financial history,
Okay.
and where individuals have control over their own financial data.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It does, doesn't it? But there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, how do we get from where we are now to that kind of, like, blockchain-powered utopia?
Well, for starters, we need regulatory clarity.
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
Tyrone Lobban pointed out that institutions like JP Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
they're waiting for clearer guidelines from regulators before they go all in on public blockchains.
And I can see why. It would be pretty risky to move trillions of dollars into a system that's, like, in a legal gray area.
Absolutely. It's a
Okay.
complex issue.
Yeah. Regulators have a tough job. They need to balance fostering innovation with protecting consumers.
And making sure the financial system stays stable.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say those regulatory hurdles are cleared.
Okay.
What's next? How would this lift and drop strategy actually work?
Well, it's not going to happen overnight, right? It'll be a gradual process.
Okay, so like baby steps.
Exactly. Institutions will probably start with smaller projects, dipping their toes in the water
Right.
before they commit, like, huge amounts of capital.
So like a pilot program.
Yeah, exactly. They might tokenize certain assets
Right.
or move specific types of transactions onto public blockchains.
Uh-huh.
And then as they get more comfortable,
They can gradually scale up their operations.
it kind of feels like we're watching, like, a sci-fi movie
Oh, how so?
where the world is slowly switching over to a new operating system.
I like that analogy. And just like in those movies, you'll have the early adopters who are all in,
Yeah,
and then those who are resisting change,
right.
and then a whole bunch of people somewhere in between.
But, like, for the average person, what are the real benefits of this, blockchain-powered financial system?
Well, imagine sending money across borders instantly
Oh,
for a fraction of what it costs now.
wow.
Or think about people who can't access financial
All
services
right.
because of where they live or their credit history.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blockchain could change all of that.
So it's like leveling the playing field.
Exactly. And think about the potential for microloans
Oh.
and micro investments.
Uh-huh.
That could empower people in developing countries
Okay.
to participate in the global economy.
That's huge. It is. And then there's the whole idea of digital identity,
Right.
where you have control over your own personal data.
It sounds pretty revolutionary.
It has the potential to be.
Yeah.
But we also need to be realistic about the risks.
Right. It's not all going to be perfect.
Definitely not. We've talked about regulatory uncertainty,
Uh-huh.
but there's also the issue of security vulnerabilities
Okay.
and the possibility of market manipulation.
Yeah, those are all serious concerns.
They are. And it's important to remember that we're still in the early stages of this technology.
So there are going to be bumps in the road.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to face challenges, maybe even setbacks.
But hopefully we can learn from those and keep moving forward.
Exactly.
You mentioned earlier that Christine Moy believes private and public blockchains will coexist.
Right.
Can you give me some, like, concrete examples of how that might work in practice?
Sure. Let's say a big company wants to, like, streamline its supply chain.
Okay.
They might create a private blockchain network where they can track everything securely and transparently.
So only authorized people would have access.
Right. But at the same time,
Okay.
public blockchains could be revolutionizing how we interact with the financial system every day.
So, like, using a decentralized exchange to swap crypto.
Exactly. Or maybe using a blockchain platform to access microloans or
Exactly.
crowdfunding opportunities.
So it's not as simple as saying public blockchains are for individuals.
And private ones are for corporations.
Right. It's more nuanced than that.
It is. There's potential for overlap and collaboration.
Like maybe a private blockchain for supply chain management
Yeah.
could connect to a public blockchain for cross-border payments.
Exactly. Or to access a larger pool of liquidity.
It's like all these different pieces of giant puzzle.
Slowly coming together.
Yeah. And we're still figuring out how they all fit.
We are, and that's what makes it so exciting.
Definitely. But we also talked about JP Morgan using terms like subnets and permission zones.
Right.
What are those exactly?
Well, they're basically ways to bridge the gap between public and private blockchains.
Right.
Think of subnets like customized lanes within a public blockchain.
Oh, okay. So like an express lane on a highway.
Exactly. So institutions can benefit from the security and transparency of a public blockchain, but still have some control over who can participate.
And what about permission zones?
Those are sections within a public blockchain that operate under specific rules set by a governing authority.
So it's like a hybrid approach.
It is, taking the best of both worlds.
Combining the security and transparency of public blockchains.
With the control and privacy of private networks.
So it's not just about picking one or the other.
Right. It's about finding the right solution for each situation.
Like having the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And as this whole blockchain ecosystem keeps evolving, we're going to see even more innovative solutions.
That blur the lines between public and private networks.
Yeah. Making the financial landscape even more interconnected and versatile.
It's exciting, but I'm also wondering about the potential downsides.
Of course.
What are the risks of this lift and drop strategy?
Especially for a giant like JP Morgan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one big concern is security.
Like, what if there's a vulnerability in the blockchain technology itself?
Right. Migrating trillions of dollars onto a public blockchain is a huge risk.
Yeah, you can't just assume everything will be perfect.
No. There's always a chance of technical glitches or even security breaches.
And those could have, like, disastrous consequences.
Exactly. So these systems need to be rigorously tested and audited before they're entrusted with that kind of money.
What else should we be worried about?
Well, there's also the possibility of regulatory pushback.
Regulators might not be too happy about JP Morgan moving all that money onto a public blockchain.
They might not. They're still trying to understand this technology, and this kind of move could make them nervous.
Yeah, they might try to impose restrictions.
Or even outright bans.
And that could stifle innovation.
Absolutely.
So it's a tricky situation.
It is. We want to encourage innovation, but we also need to protect consumers and keep the financial system stable.
It's a balancing act.
It is. We need to find that sweet spot
between
embracing new possibilities and mitigating potential risks.
And that requires everyone to work together.
Developers, entrepreneurs, regulators, and the public.
So for our listeners, what's the takeaway here? How can they, position themselves to benefit from all this?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to stay informed.
Don't just believe everything you read online.
Right. Don't just rely on headlines or sound bites. Take the time to really understand how this technology works. Explore different applications and use cases.
Yeah.
Maybe even experiment with different platforms and services.
So basically, become financially literate in the age of blockchain.
Exactly.
What skills would you say are particularly valuable?
Well, understanding cryptography is a good start.
Okay.
And decentralized finance.
DeFi.
Yes, DeFi. And tokenization.
Yeah.
Knowing about different cryptocurrencies. How to store and manage digital assets securely.
Yeah.
And the legal and regulatory landscape.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And most importantly, developing critical thinking skills.
So you can evaluate the risks and opportunities.
Exactly.
But this isn't something you can learn overnight.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
This whole blockchain revolution is still in its early stages.
It is, and there's a lot we still don't know.
But if we stay curious and informed,
we can navigate this new frontier.
And maybe even come out ahead.
Exactly.
This has been incredibly insightful.
It's been a pleasure.
And I'm really looking forward to diving into some specific use cases.
Yes, let's do that.
In the next part. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the theory, but let's get into some real-world examples.
Yeah, let's see how this tech is actually being used.
We keep mentioning tokenization, but I'm curious to see its potential, beyond just speeding up transactions.
Oh, it goes way beyond that. One area where we're seeing some really cool stuff is supply chain management.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine, tracking a product's entire journey on a blockchain.
From, Raw materials all the way to the finished product.
Exactly. Every step of the way recorded permanently and transparently.
So, like, no more fake products.
Well, it would definitely make it much harder to counterfeit goods, and it could streamline logistics.
Okay, so less waste and lower costs.
Potentially, yes.
Right.
And then there's real estate.
Oh, how does that work?
Right now, buying or selling property is like a nightmare.
It's too much paperwork.
Tons of it, and it takes forever. But imagine representing property ownership as digital tokens on a blockchain.
So it's like transferring ownership with a click of a button.
Exactly. No more waiting weeks for everything to process. And then there's the art world.
Oh, right, NFTs.
Exactly. Digital artists can create unique pieces and sell them directly to collectors.
So no more need for galleries or auction houses.
Well, they might still have a role to play, but this gives artists a whole new way to monetize their work.
And buyers know they're getting the real deal.
Right, because the authenticity is guaranteed by the blockchain. These are just a few examples.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff.
But there are also challenges, you know?
Besides the regulations.
Right. Scalability is a big one.
Meaning, like, the blockchain needs to be able to handle a lot of transactions.
Millions, even billions. If we want everyone to use this technology, we need to make sure it can keep up.
Like expanding the highway so it doesn't get jammed up with traffic.
Exactly. Luckily, there are tons of smart people working on this.
Oh, okay, so what are they doing?
Exploring things like layer 2 solutions and new consensus mechanisms. Basically, ways to make the blockchain faster and more efficient.
So it sounds like we're still in the early stages.
We are. But things are moving fast.
Well, this has been a fascinating conversation.
I really enjoyed it.
As we wrap up our deep dive into the future of finance on the blockchain, I want to leave our listeners with one final question.
Okay, I'm listening.
Given everything we've talked about, how can our listeners, prepare themselves for this new financial world? What can they do today to be ready for tomorrow?
That's a great question. I think the best advice I can give is to just stay curious, keep learning, exploring, and experimenting.
Don't be afraid to dive in and get your hands dirty.
Exactly. The blockchain space is constantly evolving, so the more you learn, the better equipped you'll be to navigate it. Maybe take some online courses, join some communities, start playing around with different platforms and applications.
Let's get out there and explore.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up.
That's good.
This has been another deep dive exploring the fascinating and ever-changing world of blockchain and finance. Until next time.